At this point, I would like to take a moment to welcome the members of the audience, to remind them that they are here as our guests. House rules give the chairman responsibility for maintaining order during committee proceedings, and disruptions will not be tolerated. Audience members who cause a disruption will be asked to leave. With that, the committee will now proceed with consideration of the budget, reconciliation, legislative recommendations. We'll take up each of the 5 subtitles separately. Our first order of business is the committee print of budget reconciliation, legislative recommendations relating to remuneration from certain insurers.
Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, the measure
Chairman,
will
I
be
do
considered
object.
as read and open for amendment at any point.
Mr. Chairman, I do object, and I would...
The gentleman objects. The clerk will report.
As indicated to you previously, I have a privileged motion under Clause 4A of House Rule 16 that I offer in writing to you at this point and ask to be heard on my motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman from Ohio.
I move to table the amendment.
There is no amendment.
Question is on...
I'd like to hear the motion read, at least, if the idea is to shut down debate on it.
No, absolutely not. So, the clerk will report the motion.
Will you pass the motion down to me? We've got them if they want them, if they ask for them. It doesn't even have to be in writing. Kevin, you want me to just read it?
The motion to postpone?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
The motion is to postpone consideration of the subtitle related to reconciliation, legislative recommendations relating to remuneration for certain insurers to Thursday, next March 23rd, 2017, pursuant to Clause 4A of House Rule 16, offered by Representative Lloyd Doggett.
Thank you. Before we move to table, would the gentleman like to be heard on this motion?
Thank you very much for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman. This motion simply requests that we reconvene this markup next week. The objective is insight, not delay. I ask unanimous consent to place in the record at this time a request sent to you last week and signed by every Democratic member regarding this matter.
Without objection.
Incredibly, for legislation of this magnitude, this plan, the particular plan we are considering today, even its principles, has never had a single public hearing anywhere. Unlike the Affordable Care Act, for which the House heard 181 witnesses in 79 public hearings, Republicans reportedly plan to jam this bill through committees today, pass it through the House this month, bring the House bill directly to the Senate floor without any Senate public hearing. The entire legislative process, unlike anything you may have seen in the civics books, all without a single public hearing. This motion simply asks for a single public forum. Indeed, you have kept your lamp under a bushel for 7 years. So secret that last week this bill was literally under armed guard in the Capitol, kept as secret as Donald Trump's tax returns. With the 7 years you've had to achieve the momentous occasion in which we join today to replace Obamacare, it is surprising that you're so determined to hide your panacea. Read the bill. How many times have we heard that with the original Affordable Care Act? Well, that rallying cry was met this week with the response that there was no bill to read until the night before last. This motion asks for 1 week during which expert witnesses can be summoned here to evaluate these far-reaching provisions and to determine how many families will suffer because of the hidden fine print. Importantly, we also have been seeking to have a representative, President Trump, to come forward to be questioned about how this bill satisfies his promise of insurance for everybody that offers more and costs less. Healthcare is too important, it impacts too many lives to have a bill jammed through in the same manner as President Trump's bungled immigration order, rushed into effect before any meaningful review and creating chaos at the airports. What this bill needs is some extreme vetting. Frankly, any vetting at all would be an improvement because it has not been vetted in any public forum. When any American buys something new, whether it's a new pair of pants, a new car, a new appliance, usually helps to ask two questions. How much does it cost? What is its size? On this new insurance plan, we're being asked to vote without knowing how much it costs and without knowing what size it is, how much it covers, how many millions of Americans are once again being left out. If you have nothing to hide, a week will not impair your effort. It will afford an opportunity to carefully scrutinize this legislative surprise package that deserves a great deal of scrutiny. Trust me, it'll be great isn't a plan. We cannot trust this plan when no administration witness has the courage to come and sit at that table and defend and explain it. We don't know the cost, we don't know what it covers, and we don't know who it leaves out. Further, this tactic of shutting out the public entirely, of refusing public hearings, of secreting legislation, appears to be a new tactic of what Speaker Ryan has called unified Republican government. As Ranking Member Neal has just explained, what we are considering today in this committee is a $600 billion tax cut. The same tactic is the approach that is apparently planned for the next tax cut. And I guess for any, not only the Trump tax break bill that we expect and have been told will be here before August, but anything else in which you have weak, really loser legislation that requires a heavy hand because the legislation is so weak, you're unwilling to have it vetted in the light of public light until the very last moment. It's sad. It's really sad. Today, at the outset of this process of shutting out the public from the democratic process, it's important that we put a stop to this crumbling of democracy. Hence, this motion simply asking postponement to next Thursday to allow the type of consideration, at least in a small way, that this legislation deserves, and I move its adoption. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Chairman,
you, Mr. T-Berry. You're recognized.
I move to table the motion.
The question now is the motion to table. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. No. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, on that, I would ask for a record vote.
Yeah, record vote is recalled. Is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Nunez? Mr. Nunez, aye. Mr. T-Berry? Mr. T-Berry, aye. Mr. Reichert? Mr. Reichert, aye. Mr. Roscom? Mr. Roscom, aye. Mr. Buchanan? Mr. Buchanan, aye. Mr. Smith of Nebraska? Ms. Jenkins? Mr. Paulson? Mr. Paulson, aye. Mr. Marchant? Mr. Marchant, aye. Ms. Black? Aye. Ms. Black, aye. Mr. Reed? Aye. Mr. Reed, aye. Mr. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Kelly, aye. Mr. Renacci? Mr. Renacci, aye. Mr. Meehan? Mr. Meehan, aye. Ms. Nome? Ms. Nome, aye. Mr. Holding? Mr. Holding, aye. Mr. Smith of Missouri? Aye. Mr. Smith, aye. Mr. Rice? Mr. Rice, aye. Mr. Schweikert? Mr. Schweikert, aye. Ms. Wolarski? Ms. Wolarski, aye. Mr. Corbello? Mr. Corbello, aye. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Neal?
No.
Mr. Neal, no. Mr. Levin?
No.
Mr. Levin, no. Mr. Lewis?
No.
Mr. Lewis, no. Mr. Doggett?
No.
Mr. Doggett, no. Mr. Thompson? Mr. Thompson, no. Mr. Larson? Mr. Larson, no. Mr. Blumenauer. Mr. Kind. Mr. Kind, no. Mr. Pascrell. Mr. Pascrell, no. Mr. Crowley. Mr. Crowley, no. Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, no. Ms. Sanchez.
No.
Ms. Sanchez, no. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins, no. Mr. Sewell, or Ms. Sewell. Ms. Sewell, no. Ms. Delbaney. Ms. Delbaney, no. Ms. Chu. Ms. Chu, no. Mr. Smith in Nebraska. Ms. Jenkins. Mr. Blumenauer. Mr. Blumenauer, no. Chairman Brady. Chairman Brady, aye.
That's true. The clerk will report.
22 yeas, 16 nays.
The roll call vote being 22 ayes and 16 nays, the motion table is approved. Does the gentleman withdraw his objection?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. I urge the objection.
Sure, the clerk will report.
Committee print, budget reconciliation legislative recommendations relating to remuneration for certain insurers. Subtitle, remuneration for certain insurers. Section 1, remuneration for certain insurers. Paragraph 6 of Section 162M of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 is amended by adding at the end of the following new paragraph. 1, termination. This paragraph shall not apply to taxable years beginning after December 31, 2017.
So at this time, the measure will be considered read and open for amendment at any point. I offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, which was distributed in advance along with the green sheet explaining it. Objection. The amendment
Mr.
in the
Chairman,
nature of
I
a
object.
substitute. Gentleman objects. The clerk will report.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to the committee print relating to remuneration from certain insurers offered by Mr. Brady of Texas. In lieu of proposed recommendations, insert the following. Subtitle, remuneration for certain insurers. Section 1, remuneration from certain insurers. Paragraph 6 of Section 162M of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 is amended by adding at the end of the following subparagraph. 1, termination. This paragraph shall not apply to taxable years beginning after December 31, 2017.
The amendment in the nature of substitute is considered as read, open for amendment at any point, and considered base text for purpose of amendment.